because the thing is, the dynamic of the group is really, really important. Like I said about this kind of social contract, it's really important that you have trust with these people and that you can get along with them. And don't get me wrong, sometimes a little bit of, negativity or maybe rubbing each other up the wrong way can be really good to like drive the story forward or define your characters or like help you. But I would say make sure that the people you sit down with, you can get along with them before you start playing with them. Because people, it is at the end of the day a game, and some people aren't very good at playing games. They don't play at losing, they don't play. And that can be very difficult because there's kind of this meta side as well. You play your character, but then when you step away from it, people that still associate you with the choices your character made. For instance, I joined this group in Shanghai, and on my second sit down with them, I played this barbarian, and they killed someone's brother, and they were going to let them go. And I decided that I wouldn't let that stand. No, my character would not. They dishonored their family. So I walked downstairs. I walked down into the galley of the ship and fired cannons at them. Started a giant fight, and then I got poisoned, and then I swung an axe into one of my party's face and killing them. And that was the second time I'd sat down with that group. And I killed one of the party. He had that character for a year and a half. Yeah. Oops. But it's all part of the game. Damn. Yeah. Cool. Scary also, man. Anyway, any last question? Okay, so he's here. He'll probably go like drink some beers. If you're into role play, go and talk to him. Thank you so much.
All right, so we have had some awesome speakers so far, and we are going to have more in a little while. But right now, we want to get you guys thinking a little bit about this last speaker. So, turn to your neighbor. Doesn't matter if you came with them, if you don't know them, make friends, and ask yourself this question. When was the last time you used your imagination in these kind of ways? Outside of the box thinking, role-playing games, anything that you might have done as a kid that you are no longer doing, and why? All right, 30 seconds. Turn to your neighbor and ask yourself those questions. Okay, 5 seconds. All right, if you haven't already, quick.
You can still keep on talking during the break. Just would like to announce that after the break, we have 4 amazing speakers. We'll have Thearo talking about growing up in a Khmer nuclear family. We'll have Prateek directly from Namibia talking about being the lion of your own jungle. We'll have Tina speaking about victim blaming, and Nicol talking about finding the bare necessities. So we're gonna take a break for how long?
Let's say take a break for 15 minutes.
Like a 10, 15? Yeah.
Hello everyone, my name is Thearo, and tonight this is my first Nuch night ever. Before I start, do you have any that there are LGBTQ plus community that came from a small town or from a countryside, because I feel like my story would also relate to them and also would resonate to them a lot. So what is nuclear family? It doesn't mean that that family making nuclear weapon. It's just like a basic concept of family that consists of one mother and one father. And when it comes to Cambodia, our concept of family is really traditions, and that also that we really, really cling to each other, that we really close to each other, that we're inseparable, and also the fact that after the genocide happened and also the civil war happened, so that's why we have a new baby boomer coming in Cambodia, like the early 1990s and the early 2000s, that from the official statistics of Cambodia, that we have a lot of new generation of Cambodians growing up. So that's why we cover approximately 2017 population. We all really know how to live the life properly. So experience, just other people are just like other people that just other people education, get married and have kids. But some other people are not in education, just like get married and have kids. But there's some other people like me that didn't want to do the same thing over and over again and over again, just also more possibility to do in life as well. That's why I burst the bubble. And this is my journey. So I came to the city when I was 18 years old. I was like, I wasn't thinking sure about yet. I was like coming to the city, and I was like trying to pursue my degree because I thought that that's what other people would do as well. And then I got to my college, so that's my first time of trying to live the life that I want to. And I first separated from my family, and I got access to electricity finally and internet, and I I got more information to so many things in life that I never had before. And I was like I was so comfortable of living the life that I would want to, but all of a sudden I was in the city for 5 years by myself. I was like enjoying it, but my parents decided to come to me too. And they were like, "No, come live with us," because they didn't want to spend too much money running on two places when we live in the same city. And I was like, here we go again. And it's like the place where we came from, we're just like a village out of nowhere. And my parents are so against gay people because so many people from small town were so against gay people. And it's like, what should I do? So the only thought that I had to myself was like, I need to leave them again. So in order to leave my family, I need to be able to support myself. I need to be able to live, and in the second also working a stable job. So I've been working really hard, and it was like a really difficult time for me because I really want to leave my parents. And eventually I did. I was living myself by myself for quite some time, and then I came out to my parents because I was 25. But maybe that's the time. But they wouldn't take it seriously. They was mad for me, mad at me for like a month, and then all of a sudden we stopped talking about it. But after like 5 or 7 months later, they was asking me if I want to get married because we wanted kids, and it's like what? And then all of those small things like that, it just like all of my emotion is like really not happy. And I was just like just going out and touching it and around. But when this kind of thing happened, I just had more things, more time to myself that I didn't have the luxury to do all the things that I did before. And I just realized that there was something really wrong with me and I need to change that. So that's why I stopped talking to my family for a while, just like trying to concentrate on my own. And I just kind of like cling to my friends instead, and they've been giving me really good advice. And I was like doing it, but the fact that I have my friends giving me advice, it doesn't going to change me from the inside because we have so different lives, we went through so many things. That's why I went so hard on trying to make myself happy. I've been doing research and I've been trying to do like another part because I've been trying so hard at my work. And why wouldn't I try to be alert with my life too? Why I couldn't try to make myself happy? So I changed some of my habits that I stopped going out with this and again. And also just because I was just really sad at the time. And when I got done, it's just like it doesn't make me happy, it just makes me really angry. And then I also realized that
the things that I did to myself, like change my hair, change my hair color, anything. It doesn't. So this activity is like little activity is kind of like make me happy because I read it somewhere online that it kind of like has the happy chemicals in your brain, and that's that's make me happy. That's make me happy. And when I came back to my mom's a couple of weeks ago, I was a lot happier than I used to be before. And apparently, my mom she was trying to talk to me like better, like not trying to like blame me about my life anymore because I was happy. But still, we still had like a lot of unresolved business. But it's been a while. It's been like 11 long years. I was trying so hard just to make my parents accept me, but instead I was like steer away of the chance that I had that I was trying to better myself too. And I feel like that this is really important, not just for me, but for everyone, that sometimes you need to take some time to realize and also like break from everything and look back to your life that maybe there's something wrong, maybe there's something to change at the moment, just looking back and trying to change it. And eventually things might be get a little better. And there are a lot of people like me. There are also a lot of young Cambodians like me. They are saying we still have that kind of stuff that we're trying to make our parents happy instead of trying to make ourselves happy. So then I'm here. I'm interested if you know some Cambodian people that having similar problem like me, it's like let them talk to me, or maybe I could talk to them so we could share some experience, something that would improve their life or improve my life also. And also, I just want to add the fact that I was born in a Khmer nuclear family. In theory, that we just so close and connect to each other, but in fact, we're just so disconnected that we just so not really trying to understand each other. And that is all for me tonight. Thank you.
Let's check this together here. Oh, does anyone have a question for Thearo? Got it. I'll repeat the question. So the person posing the question hasn't been in Cambodia for a long time, so they're curious to know in terms of pressure from family to have kids, is adoption an option that's acceptable or not?
Okay, so in Cambodia, actually, gay marriage hasn't fully legalized yet, and we could adopt kids, but when we like a straight couple, but in gay couple, it's really difficult to do that. And the fact that my parents asked me if they want kids from me, it means like they want me to get married, like they want me to get married to a girl and make babies, because my brother he also just got married and also just got twice pregnant and it was like still time. And it's like, wait, I think like I thought we talked about this before, and now why why do you still want me to get married and have kids? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it can be difficult when you're getting that feedback of I'm not really married. Okay, huh? Any more questions? Yeah, so yeah, I can. So apparently, sorry, I'll just repeat the question. So there was an article recently circulating that suggested there was LGBT education coming into public schools. Do you happen to know if that's already implemented or it's on the way?
But we don't have it fully implemented yet, but I think that it's really important as we, as a countryside Cambodian, that we came from a really small town and we didn't have access to more information. The fact that we could include that in the formal education system, that people would know more about gay people, not just gay people, but also people in the LGBTQ community also. So that's really important.
Any more questions? I'll take one more. Okay, possibly a little personal, but answer it if you feel comfortable. So, with your family in particular, what precisely is it that your family finds difficult to accept about you? Is it health? Is it how it looks to society? What is it exactly?
Okay, so this problem also like interacted to the concept of like real family. Like I said, that we're so close to each other, but we're so separated. We never trying to understand each other. So the fact that I came out to them that I was gay, they were just like not really accepting it. And I asked them to just like do some research, just like talking to people that in the case find there's so many gay people in the world, but they never tried to do that. So the fact that they're not accepting me as being gay, but that's okay because we still talk to each other in the family, and I'm going on and follow to live my life based on my lifestyle. And unless I mean the fact that I'm happy, I think they would be happy to be happy too. I think that's the most important part.
Beautiful. All right, we're gonna leave it there. Thank you so much, Cheryl. Round of applause. All right. Next up, we actually have a speaker who is joining us via Zoom. So this is something that we've been working on in the background for a little while. You may not know, but we've been doing Mad Night online. We've just started going back to in-person events. But we want to leave the space open for people that may want to join us online. So our next speaker is originally from India. He's joining us from Africa, and his name is Prateek. He is something of a personal coach. He's going to talk about entrepreneurship.
He's on the screen. You can't see him, but he can't see you either. But he can hear you talk. So
Right.
there we go. So and then okay, so and then you can just click on the thing and start. All right. So go. You can't see me.
All right. So we all experience pains and traumas of one kind or another as children, right? Now these traumas leave us vulnerable and pierce through our adulthood, which is why after a tough day at work, most of us have a habit that we have a go-to. Some of us want to go for a drink with friends, but some of us have something different. Now, to protect ourselves from these traumas, we develop a psychological defense mechanism or an emotional armor, if you will. We use sarcasm, for example, to avoid being vulnerable or to numb out the pain with drinks or food or sex. But mind you, they have big side effects. These defense mechanisms turn into pattern and then habits that we tend to accept and overlook. By the time we reach adulthood, they start sabotaging our lives in the form of broken relationships, addictions, narcissism, and sometimes even violence. Now, these patterns persist and grow while we overlook them because forcing ourselves to look inside, examine, and introspect can be really terrifying, leaving us unaware of our own self. And you know what happens then. You just daze around into unsatisfaction and unhappiness, blaming things on people and situations. But this internal fight is very important. Until a lion realizes it's a lion, he'll behave like a dog among other dogs. But once it does, the whole paradigm changes for them to bow before him. My name is Prateek Khare, and let's talk about the lion in you. In a recent study conducted with about 3,600 top tier leaders across the world, only 12% of them could be identified as self aware. Now, does that mean that higher you climb up the chain, the ladder, the less aware you are of yourself? Well, that seems to be the case here, right? Now, let's talk about the types of self-awarenesses. There are basically two types. The first being internal. Now, internal self-awareness is the process of introspection, the one we talked about above. When you force yourself into look inside and uncover the demons and angels that hide, right? Now, talking about the other type, it's it's called the external self-awareness, of course, but this one is a more interesting one because you see yourself from the eyes of other peers to understand how people perceive you. Quite the contrary to the usual belief of one must not be affected by others' opinions and stuff like that. Well, let's talk about that in a minute. Now, but wait, does that mean introspection is the answer to everything? Is it that simple? Well, I'm afraid that's not true entirely. Although introspection is key, the problem here is that most people do it incorrectly. But what does that exactly mean? The whole perception created when you're trained in sales and marketing and in general is to focus on the why, and a lot of talks as well. But why does not apply here? And that's the mistake that most people do. You have to ask yourself, what is the situation that's affecting me? And not why is it affecting me, right? Let's talk about some simple habits and practices that you could use to be more self-aware. First, listen more than you talk. Most of the times people listen and within a fraction of a second, you have your reply because they didn't listen to understand you, but to respond, be it meetings, friends or lovers. Well, mostly the last one. Okay. Second, be curious about your own mind, but don't mistake it with putting yourself on the ledge with, judgmental internal eyes. Nothing like that. Be open. There's no measuring scale. There's no right or wrong. Try to explore yourself. Look closer into your daily habits, your way of conversing, right? Third one, look for emotional blind spots. This is really interesting. All of us have some pieces of our emotional lives buried inside us that we've forgotten or ignored because they're really painful. Remember the emotional armor we talked about? This is the instance why you developed that in the first place. Fourth, ask for feedback and take it well. We all like to ask for feedback usually when we do something great, like after the talk, I will be asking you. But that's just for praise and appreciation that we know are coming. But be open for the bad one too. Remember, it's supposed to be an input only and not the judgment. Yeah. Finally, reflect on your values. It is very important to connect with your original self from time to time and remember what you truly stand for. It doesn't have to be complicated, but just to clarify what you're actually chasing in life and stay true to it. Now we're all in a rat race of climbing the ladder in our own spheres. Everyone wants to be a leader in somewhere or the other, and self-awareness and having growth mindset is a key factor to help you get there. The other factor is your passion. It is the fuel which powers you on the journey. Let's talk about that. All right, let me introduce you to a old Japanese concept called ikigai. You all have probably heard about it or seen it somewhere. It is a mechanism to jot down everything you stand for and what you have, and then come to the intersection where you find out your ikigai, your reason of being. Now, let's talk about the first two parts of it. The first two parts being passion and mission. Now, your passion and your mission is something that you love doing and are also very good at. That's your skill, right? While your mission is something you love, but also what the world needs. Because we all struggle to reach to the destination and forget that is a journey, death is the destination. The other two parts being your vocation and profession. Remember, vocation and profession is something you can be paid for, something you're skilled at, and also what the world needs, right? It's something that does not bring home your weekly check or monthly check, but something that you're put on earth to do. Lastly, I'd like to wrap up with one of my favorite quotes: a lion runs the fastest when hungry. Your ambition in life dictates your hunger, but only with the right pace can you achieve it. Well, thank you everyone. That was my time. My name is Prateek.
Okay. Okay, so I'll go with the Q&A with the screen. If anyone has a question, well, you can share your computer. So, any questions? Yes. Why Africa?
Why you're in Africa?
Why are you in Africa?
Why am I in Africa? Well, actually, I came here in February. I come here every year for business. I run an education consultancy firm. And then, someone somewhere decided to eat a bat. And then since there, every one of us are stuck.
Yes. What is your ikigai?
What is my ikigai? My ikigai is actually speaking and marketing. That's what I'm doing now. That's how I found out about 3 years back. And that's something I'm doing right now.
Yes. Question? Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought you were waving at me. I don't know. It wasn't my direction, so I get confused. And any questions? No, you're just waving at me. Okay, wait a second. Can someone wave to me? But yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Is that for me? Yeah, okay, yes.
Is it true that the male lions are very lazy, the female lions do all the work? So what do you think about that?
Is it true that lions are lazy? It's not like lion and lion. Russian has. Yo, I'm French. Okay, so male lions are lazy, and lions wants to act go for the food. What do you think about that?
I couldn't really get that one. Can you maybe speak again or type it down?
Yeah, okay. Can you type that? Yeah, we say male lion and female lion. You don't say lion? Yeah, I don't know.
Well, it is true that it is as a matter of fact, actually it is true that male lions are very, very lazy. They're just there to socialize.
So are they the ones who run when they're hungry, or are they the females who run when
the lion is hungry? Okay. Yes, am I supposed to?
Okay. This is weird. Anyway, so maybe David, you have a last question. Yeah.
So is this book based on personal experience, or is it just lion?
Is it based on personal experience, or are you just lying?
Well, my line came out from a personal experience.
Okay. Personal experience. Okay, good. Okay, let's ask questions. Yeah.
Okay, so when you go to personal life and need to help the
Okay, where do you draw the line between personal drive and helping people you love?
Right. To that question, should I still answer that question? All right. So for that, actually, it's a very good question. I'd recommend you to watch a TEDx talk by, I forgot the name of the speaker, but it's called Giver and Taker. It will give you a clear aspect of where you need to draw the line so as to not exhaust yourself.
I'll get it on the chat.
Okay. Sorry, I don't really hear what's going on.
Yeah, I'll send you the link. Yeah.
Okay, so next we will have Tina, who will talk on victim blaming. Welcome, Tina.
Hello, everyone. 5 years ago, I experienced one of the worst experiences in my life. At 9 p.m., I left Duplex after dancing salsa. And although one of the dancers wanted me to stay longer and dance to another song, I was tired, so I refused and left with my motor. I threw my shoes in my bag, my dancing shoes. I quickly grabbed the bag around my shoulder, and I drove off with my motor. While I was driving, two men drove up to me and grabbed my bag. And continuing while I was driving, they pulled me off my motor. And because they desperately wanted my bag and I was attached, I couldn't get loose. So what happened is that they dragged me across the Chinese embassy for around 100 meters behind the motor until I got loose. Needless to say, I was pretty badly injured after that incident. And among many, many wounds, I also had 3 weeks of daily hospital visits. And I suffered from PTSD and panic attacks. So for many of you, the first thought probably now was, why did she bring a bag? Why did she drive with her motor? Why did she not know better? I do wonder how many of you heard my story just now and thought that instead of thinking what I should have done differently, how many of you actually thought they should not have attacked her? Many of us probably wouldn't have. So today, I would like to inspire the people among you that did think that I should have done something differently to maybe think a little bit differently next time. So maybe you have not realized, but many of you probably just took part in victim blaming. And victim blaming is the act that occurs when a victim of a crime is held responsible for the crime. It is often related to female rape and rape in general and sexual assault, but it also occurs in situations like mine. Anytime someone defaults to questioning what the victim should have done differently, they are actually taking part in victim blaming. So back to my story. I had a great support network. After the event, many people come to visit me. They brought me food. My fridge was full. They cut vegetables for me. And people tried to be really supportive and really tried to help me. There were a lot of wonderful people with lots of good intentions, but it was all overwritten by the victim blaming that occurred unknowingly by these friends. So although there was a lot of well intention, it actually became a burden on me. So what I heard a lot, for example, from the dancer that wanted to dance with me, he said, "You should have danced that dance with me after it happened." My boss, after I came back to work, told me, "Well, as a woman, you shouldn't have been alone that night." You know who also victim blames the victim? I constantly thought in my head how I could have changed that night. What could I have done differently to avoid that issue? And because I couldn't stand the victim blame that happened from my friends, I ended up isolating myself and basically going through the rough time on my own. And sorry. So it turns out there is actually a reason why my friends reacted the way it did. There is the so-called just world hypothesis, meaning that people think what happens to other people is something they deserve, because that's how we try to justify what happens to someone. And people don't explicitly accuse victims of failure to prevent the crime, but in fact, many people actually don't realize that they did it. So So something simple like hearing about a crime and thinking you should have been more careful is already victim blaming. Holding a victim responsible for the misfortune is a way of avoiding admitting to ourselves that we are powerless sometimes, even though if we do everything right, something still can happen to us. So I would like to give some alternatives of like how you can support a friend without doing what my friends unknowingly did. So number one is definitely a victim is a victim. That's it. Like a victim is not the perpetrator. Mental recovery takes time and is a process. So give your friend time. Many people find it awkward to talk. So there is a lot of practical support you can give. In my case, it would have been helping me shopping or something really simple and awkward, but help me wash my hair and help me change my clothes. Moral support is more difficult. You almost feel like you have to say something, but you don't. You can just be there and listen and don't do anything else. Like that would have been very easy for me as well. I didn't want to talk about it. So to finish up for the victims among you today, I just want to say it's not your fault. Thank you so much for doing that talk, which I imagine was incredibly good. It's something that makes you feel incredibly vulnerable, I'm sure, thinking about it. So, respect. Any questions for Tina?
Actually, before we do questions, I'm curious, can we get a show of hands if anyone has experienced a similar situation while living here or elsewhere? Yeah, it happens. So now you know from the inside what it can feel like. All right.
Do you feel like the younger generations are sort of understanding this and doing victim blaming less than maybe older generations?
I'll repeat the question. So do you feel like the younger generation are perhaps engaging in this kind of victim blaming less so than the older generation?
I'm not sure if it's a generation issue. I think it's overall an issue of being too sensitized to it. I think we all live in Cambodia. I've been here for 6 years. People easily, we hear it all the time, right? Bad connection. We don't even think about the attackers anymore. We just think, oh, she should know better. She shouldn't have brought her back, right? Like she shouldn't have gone by her motto. So I think it's across the board, or at least for me, it was across the board. It was everyone. It was my parents. It was my best friends. It was people I hardly knew. It was my supervisor. It was across the board.
Okay.
Where do you draw the line between giving someone practical advice and actual victim blaming? So if you had like, hey, maybe it's safer to carry your bag in a certain way. Obviously, after the fact, it's very arrogant. Can be very arrogant. But where do you draw the line between victim blaming and versus practical advice?
I'll repeat the question. So where do you draw the line between someone trying to give practical advice and then shifting over into victim blaming?
I think that maybe it happens when, like practical advice, like you shouldn't bring a bag. That's not very helpful, right? I mean, yeah, we all ideally shouldn't bring a bag. Most of the time, I don't have a bag with me, but I have to put my dancing shoes somewhere. That sounds like so minor and so ridiculous, but we all carry a bag sometimes, right? So I feel like I know people want to give advice, but what happened to me in that case a lot was that you don't sleep, you don't eat, you're constantly working through this. Like you are constantly thinking about this again, and you're thinking, yes, I should have danced that dance, or I shouldn't have brought my shoes back, or anything like, oh, I should have turned left instead of right. You're constantly thinking about this, so I'm not sure if you as a victim really need advice during that time anyway. What you need is just someone that is there for you. the person that was most important for me was actually a friend that found out about it. And because I was under such shock, I didn't go to a normal hospital. The locals took me to a local hospital, and I didn't realize how badly injured I was. So what happened is my friend found out 3 days later, and she actually took me to a proper hospital. And while we were waiting there, the nurses started, picking on my wounds and started trying to do something, and it was incredibly painful, and I was shaking. And I was screaming, and what my friend did was like screamed at the nurses, and she said like, "Stop touching her, get a doctor." And that was just really helpful because I felt I was too weak and too powerless to do anything. So that was really helpful. Not so much the advice, but just being there and understanding what that person needs in that situation.
Okay, we've got time for one more. Actually. So, yeah, with respect to what you have been being terrible, is there any preventative steps or measures that have made you feel safer when you're out there?
So yeah, the funny thing was that I actually thought I was being quite smart, right? That you have your bag usually snatched when it's on your side. So I have it around my shoulder, right? So obviously now I hardly ever bring a bag, and if I do, I actually bring like a flashlight bag. So like if someone wants to steal it, like, oh, that really ugly thing. So like if they want to snatch it, they can just snatch it. That like I'm not attached to it. It's easy to just get it out of my hand. It took me a couple of years until I was able to drive it out again, because as soon as I got away, I started shaking. I should drive a motor. I should drive a car. It's much safer. Yeah, but Copas has a car, right? Who actually does that? Right. So not all the stuff is cleaner, that everyone had, like, there's a difference between driving a motor and paying $2 a week for your petrol, or like paying a Grab and paying $5 for. So it is not that easy. Of course, there were preventative measures, like okay, trying to avoid even further. I paid much more attention about my surroundings, but I also did pay attention about my surroundings before. That day, I did notice they rose up to me. I noticed too late what they were up to, because I didn't realize something like this could happen. All right, one more. Okay, so victim blaming aside, what kind of language would you like to hear used about the attackers? In the end, it doesn't matter. The attackers at that point, in the end, they don't matter. Of course, I want justice. Like, I still feel like that, like something really just happened to me. But in the end, like, I just want I would just like for people to recognize that I was the victim of an attack, rather than I somehow had a fault in being attacked this way. Yeah. All right. I think we will round it up. Thank you so much. We come to our final speaker of the evening, Nicol, who is going to talk about finding the bare necessities. Welcome, Nicol. Bears. There are some species so amazing. So here you have your 8 main species of bears that you find in the world. And we all know the black bears, the grizzly bears, big polar bears, even the panda bears, face-flowing bears. But tonight I'm going to speak to you about the Asian bears that are not so well known, the sun bear and the moon bear, representing the sun and the moon through the crescents on their chest. And as much similarities as they have in their characteristics and habits and attributes, they actually have a lot of physical differences that are quite clear on the next slide. Moon bears have rather large ears with long hair and short claws, and their presence is in a V-shaped cream color to represent moon, whereas the sun bears have small ears with short hair, really long claws, and their presence is in a rounded golden shape to represent the sun rising. So to put it in a bit of perspective, just in sizes, you have your massive boy, the polar bear over here, and right on the other end is your sun bear, the smallest of all bears. Next to him, the sloth bear, which I will get to later, and in the fourth is the moon bear. So they're the smallest of the Asian bears. So how did I come across these bears? A few years ago, I was in Malaysia on a visa trip, and I went to Kuala Lumpur and was advised to go to this animal park. And being a South African, thought, oh, I'm going on a safari. It was not a safari, it was a zoo. Finding my way through the zoo, I found this enclosure with the sun bear just going around and around in circles and sniffing the door. So I begged the guy to tell me what was going on, and meanwhile his partner was pregnant and he was waiting for them to arrive with the babies. So I begged him if I could kneel down, and I put my hands against the glass, and I put my nose against the glass and waited for this bear to come, and he actually stopped, and he put his paw on my hand and his nose against my nose through the glass. And I looked into his eyes, and I swear I saw the whole universe, and my whole perspective of the world changed that day. So this is the sun bear, amazing, with his giant claws, and actually the name is a little bit deceiving because it's a nocturnal animal. He spends most of his days in the trees and most of the falls himself. They have giant claws to get up those trees and also really big teeth. They are about 10 times smaller than a polar bear, but their teeth are almost the same size as a polar bear. So in perspective, like with the size, they always have the biggest teeth of the bear in relation to their body size. They also use these teeth to help them climb, and that goes to the diet. They are omnivores. They eat berries, insects, and honey, obviously, which gives them the long tongue, which can range to about 25 to about 30, 35 centimeters, depending on bear. And this just gets them to dig right up in there and get their grub, whether it be honey or actually they break over termites. But they are in trouble. There's been a 30% decline over the past 30 years in their population due to their habitat being destroyed from deforestation, but also because of poaching for many different reasons, which will be elaborated when I get to the moon bear side. Going on to the moon bear, yet again, the name is quite deceiving because this is not a nocturnal animal, but actually hibernates unlike the sun bear. And he's perfectly adapted for his environment, his environment. For the long hair, gets him into mountainous, cold areas of Asia, and the big ears allow them actually to cool down in the really tropical areas. They absolutely love swimming, and they are really, really good at it. Really strong swimmers and excellent climbers. And they also are omnivores, just like the sun bear. They eat berries and plants, and honey is a part of their diet, but they also eat meat. I was told that apparently if it's edible, this little guy will eat it. This is Nuch, by the way, a rescue bear from one of the wild ones. So then it comes to this point with both sun bears and moon bears get affected due to poaching. Their organs get harvested or they get taken to bio farms where they are put in tiny little cotton-sized cages where they can barely move, and they can spend up to 30 years in this cage where they attach a metal catheter into the gallbladders and extract the bile from it for Chinese medicine, which scientifically has no medicinal values whatsoever. So how do we get these bears to be happy little cubs running around in sanctuaries and hopefully get released back into the wild? There are many online petitions that you can actually look at, for example, through 4 Paws. But if you want to look a bit closer, we have right outside of Phnom Penh, there's Free the Bears that actually is at the Khmer Wildlife Rescue Center. And they have about 120 rescue bears over there. They are based in 4 different countries and have rescued over 950 bears. You can donate. They encourage the natural foraging of the bears and also the mental stimulation. These are 6 different bears that were rescued by different 144s from Vietnam, just to show you that people are trying. There are only 120 bears left, and there are about 500 in Vietnam from 4,000, and still, unfortunately, 10,000 in captivity in China. This is the sloth bear, who is just so cute, perfect little merger between the sun and the moon bear. He also has the presence on his chest, which is actually like our fingerprints, each individual. Unfortunately, he is, along the other 2, on the IUCN's red list for endangered and threatened animals. What can you do? I ask you to be more mindful about your decisions when it comes to wildlife tourism and wildlife entertainment, and just be the voice for the voiceless and try to empty the cages. Thank you very much.
So, do you have any questions for Nicol? Oh, sure. Hello, yes. Oh, okay. Can I repeat the question? Is there any evolutionary advantage to them having the crescent and the beach?
Jennifer don't answer because she actually works for Free the Bears.
You can tell them, you know, repeat.
Oh.
I'll repeat for anyone that didn't hear. So, pardon me if I messed this up. Basically, what I understand is that the crescent is it's like a fingerprint, so it's individual to individual. And the mother bears use it to find those bears. So, okay, because there can be multiple cubs in this thing. All right, does that answer your question? Yay! All right, any more questions? Oh, that's one rather. So, two-part question. Why do you think it is that these Asian bears are overlooked in favor of like the bigger bears, the polar bears, the grizzlies?
In my personal opinion, I think maybe people know about animals that they get exposed to a lot. So I guess a lot of the bears that you see are from movies, or maybe that you learn about in school. And I think maybe there is a part of it that gets turned down because there's such a horrifying industry behind these bears that maybe there is a chance that it's almost time to not learn about it. But also, I do think if you come from a lot of Western places, you don't learn a lot about the Asian geography, for example. We didn't in South Africa. I think that also has a place to do with what education you have in terms of geography and animals in that thing.
And then the second part of that question is, are there exceptions to that? So are there, for example, Asian bears that are famous on film in particular characters that you can think of?
I don't know any, well, actually, there is, Baloo in the Jungle Book is actually stated to be a sloth bear. And Bagheera refers to him in the movie as being he's known in the movie as being the sleepy, lazy bear. So, and Bagheera actually refers to him as being a sloth bear. So I think that would be one. I don't know.
Okay, that would be 1 second. I think we have a question from online. Is that what the I'm going to take one more question. Ooh, okay, maybe 2 more. All right, Lauren, I'm going to go with you first. quite specific question. So you mentioned the bear farms where they're kept in these horrible crush cages. When Free the Bears come in and rescue those bears, what happens next? Is there some alternative put in place for the farm?
Well, I'm pretty sure Jennifer could probably elaborate on that question, but I do think that Free the Bears don't actually shut down the wild farms, but they rescue bears from the different farms. So it isn't just you go in and rescue 200 of the bears in captivity, you go in and rescue, for example, 6 at a time. Whatever you can manage as things to negotiate or how many in some time.
Yeah, anything to add? Okay, I will try my best to summarize that. So, in a nutshell, obviously, with a centre like Free the Bears, capacity is limited. So, when you go to a wild farm, it might be getting the bears one by one. But it sounds like there's moves in a positive direction in terms of the Vietnamese government are starting to crack down on this practice, and also the value is not what it was for the wild. So that's some good news. At least I think we have 1 or 2 more questions. Okay. What is the supposed properties of the bio, right?
Maybe different stories, but I feel like there are some questions that could directly be asked to Jennifer afterwards, and when it goes into detail, she's happy to answer because she actually works with it. I'm just passionate about space, so it would probably be a good question to answer afterwards, to be quite honest.
Many elements. It's quite central in traditional Chinese medicine, for example, or traditional Asian medicine, right? Okay, Jordan, last question. Let's go. Okay, so again, this might be one for Jan.
My partner in crime is back.
I'll repeat the question though. So I think more or less, okay, so you're taking one bear out of this bear farm, but what happens? Does that bear then just get replaced because the incentive still exists? Okay, so interestingly, every bear in one of these farms has a microchip, so that were an individual to be taken away, there would need to be a very good reason as to why that was replaced. Because it's illegal